to find peace and harmony.
We put that love energy out here, you know what I'm saying? Like we make sure, where it ain't no violence going on,
But this scene from the neighborhood back in August reveals another side of Gideon's Army's efforts. Residents decided to make it difficult for police who came there to arrest a convicted killer wanted for violation of his federal probation. That man, Charles Brooks, was a paid employee of Gideon's Army. Court and police records reveal he was also one of the people involved in this shootout in the neighborhood back in April.
The focus is on what people see as being the failures of Gideon's Army.
Gideon's Army founder Rashida Fatuga doesn't see that incident as a reflection on her group.
We lose people in war, and I'm sure, generals and everybody, they try to save everybody that they can. It just doesn't happen that way.
So you guys are all violence interrupters. What does that mean exactly?
Clearly, we interrupt the violence.
Those efforts have brought them national attention along with taxpayer money and public donations. Gideon's Army tax returns showed that in 2019-2020, the group took in almost $1.5 million. Some of that taxpayer money from the Tennessee Department of Human Services.
And we're asking that you please fund Gideon's Army with the $1 million that's been added.
This summer, Fatuga and her group convinced Metro Council to approve another $1 million for violence interruption programs like theirs.
What I find interesting in those situations, you see how you use certain names when he's in court and he's talking, but then he use total different names that's not in court talk. It's like, okay, so you're mixing these things up. I'm trying to understand what's happening here. You see what I'm saying? The name I just heard you use that asked the judge for the money to fund Gideon's Army being effective in the community isn't the same names I've been hearing you saying. But yet you'll use those names to paint Gideon's Army, but won't use that name to paint Gideon. Maybe I'm not making sense. Let's run it back.
Part of their pitch, their record in Cumberland View.
We had no shootings, no homicides, no robberies, no carjackings, nothing for almost a year, 10 months. And that's been unheard of.
But we checked, and during the 10 months when Gideon's Army says there was no violence here, police received 38 calls about shootings, shots being fired, or people with weapons.
So we don't deny that those, we've never said that those didn't happen.
What time period are you measuring?
So I guess that would be 4 months.
So you're saying maybe it wasn't 10 months without violence?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what I understand is that it had been 10 months.
Among those shootings was that gun battle back in April, but Fatuga says the shootout allegedly involving her own employee doesn't count.
There's a difference between shootings and contact shootings.
So now he's talking to Fatuga.
Between what?
Shootings and contact shootings. What we measure is who has been.
But why you don't use somebody else's background in is what I'm saying. You can't use one person to paint. And especially someone that can't defend themselves. Like, that's weird.
That's right, because no one was hit by the gunfire. Gideon's Army doesn't count it as an act of violence.
That damn clip, they sound like they emptied out a 15-round clip. It's ridiculous.
Nor did it count this gun battle in July 2020 between two rival gangs, again apparently because no one was actually shot.
Metro National 911, what's the address of your emergency?
It's a black sergeant shooting at this car.
There was also an incident a month earlier.
There was two cars that were chasing each other, shooting at each other.
When a chase that began in Cumberland View ended in one car running another off the road a few miles away. Multiple witnesses identified Gideon's Army volunteer Cleveland Shaw, a local gang figure, as the suspect in the case.
I was calling because there was a shootout in Dodge City.
And when a man was shot 2 weeks later, the Gideon's Army volunteer was again identified as a suspect. The group didn't count that one either. As for the alleged involvement of two of her own people in 3 separate shootings,
And neither were charged or convicted. And this is supposed to be a democracy. And what we do is we hand out convictions before anyone has had their due process. And that's not fair.
And after Shaw went on the group's payroll, there was another shooting in the neighborhood this past March. Surveillance cameras captured the Gideon's Army employee holding what investigators described as an AK-47 type weapon. Shaw would end up being killed in another shootout not far from the neighborhood this past April. Police say they believe the man who shot Shaw was acting in self-defense. Still, Fatuga makes no apologies.
I will say, Phil, that this work isn't pretty. I will say, Phil, that it might be a kid in North Nashville who we lose tomorrow. It might be a young adult that we're working with, paid, unpaid, that we're trying to do everything that we can to change their lives, but at least we are doing something.
After our interview, we followed up with Ms. Fatuga to give her a chance to document her claims about how Gideon's Army's efforts have reduced violence, but she never responded to that question. We also checked police calls for service, and that data just does not show any major changes.
Phil, there are a lot of people in the community who've had some positive interactions with Gideon's Army.
Right. So is there any question about their good intentions?
Absolutely not. And a lot of people do think they have some good ideas, but these are complicated issues, and it's important to be honest for the sake of the people who live in this community, the people you heard in those 911 calls, when bullets are still flying and when people continue to live in fear. Rory. Hands out.
They own them.
Convincing the council to allocate $1 million of taxpayer money.
Tells the public it's all about justice, peace, and harmony. But now an exclusive News Channel 5 investigation has discovered a side of the group most have never seen.
News Channel 5 chief investigative reporter Phil Williams spent 6 months combing through the social media of the group's leaders. And what he uncovered is sure to raise questions about what your tax dollars are supporting.
My ask is for funding support in the amount of $1 million. Peace, love, and unity. We already got it.
This past summer, Gideon's Army went to the Metro Council with hands out.
What's up, y'all?
Convincing the council to allocate $1 million of taxpayer money for violence prevention efforts like theirs.
And I challenge everybody, wherever you from, stop the violence in your own community.
Gideon's Army founder Rashida Fatuga says the group's work with the kids of North Nashville.
So we need Gideon's Armies to come back.
It's what Gideon's Army is really all about.
We work to eliminate the root causes of the prison pipeline, save our children from death and incarceration, save all children from death and incarceration.
All that nice guy approach.
But buried among social media posts by some of Gideon's Army's frontline leaders, we discovered a side of the group that most of the public has never seen.
And I'm talking about the Caucasian race, man. You know what I mean? Ever since they've been on this planet, they have caused chaos, confusion, destruction.
Hambino Godbody, as he's known in the streets, is outreach coordinator for Gideon's Army and heads up the group's violence interruption program.
Get off of him now.
It was the murder of George Floyd that led Godbody to post this video about white people, a video that he recently reposted insisting what I'm speaking is true history.
We need to come to our senses and realize that they are who they are. Let's quit trying to make them be what they not, and that's naturally good human beings because they must not.
While George Floyd experienced the direct trauma of that, there's still a secondary trauma that we as Black people often do experience when we see someone strangled to death by the police.
When have any people on the earth ever lived in peace with white people? Our way. Yeah, I thought so. Never. Never. You cannot live in peace with them.
Godbody even posted this article on Facebook that suggests an ancient scientist created Caucasians who, quote, became an out-of-control pestilence to humanity and the planet itself.
I get being ticked off about racism, but if a white person said all Black people are bad, would you have problems with them getting taxpayer funding?
It is not the same situation. Gideon's Army receives funding. Gideon's Army receives funding. And
this is one of your top lieutenants saying this.
Let me finish. We determine the direction and the mission of Gideon's Army.
Y'all want to know what real kings, warriors, and gods do? Huh? They wage war on their enemies. We've been passive too long.
Then there's Chef Mike True, Gideon's Army's community director, a position that sometimes puts him on the streets with the area's children.
Start teaching your children how to shoot, start equipping your children with weapons, teach them how to stick somebody with a knife.
True recorded this rant after the killing of Ahmaud Arbery, suggesting that the community needed to be ready to defend itself. But it didn't stop there.
And I done said it when Daniel Hambrick was shot, and I'm going to say it again. If any of you white motherfuckers ever shoot my child, I swear to God, I'm going to go motherfucking Baghdad around this.
True had been front and center when Gideon's Army accepted a $100,000 check from the gun control group Moms Demand Action. But listen to his ideas for dealing with issues like mass incarceration.
Y'all want to know how to overturn the prisons? Say the system. Y'all know how many of us it is? Y'all know anything about prison riots? Huh? They ain't got enough people to kill all of us. They ain't got enough people to kill all of us.
Are those kind of comments in keeping with your mission?
The police also call themselves Nashville's Guardians.
But I'm asking about Gideon's Army.
I hear you. I hear you. And every officer also holds different opinions.
We have got to level up. We have got to train ourselves. We have got to protect ourselves.
After the George Floyd killing, True argued that the answer was to make police fear getting killed when they come into black communities.
I know of incidents in Chicago where police tried to arrest people and the city, like, man, they came out and wasn't having it. The police packed up and left like, man, we just gonna tuck our tail and leave. It ain't even worth it. You see what I'm saying? Because they knew that them people they was dealing with, it's gonna be a gunfight. And those officers ain't ready to die.
But he's talking about wanting the community to threaten to kill cops.
I don't take it that way, Phil. I don't really want to get in a tit for tat with what one of, my team members has said, especially in a time where we are feeling afraid for our lives.
Do you guys get vaccinated?
No. Vaccination. Why would we get that?
Both men have also posted misinformation about COVID vaccines at a time when the city has tried to convince residents to protect themselves from the virus.
And they herding a bunch of you motherfuckers to the death now with this vaccine.
True even took aim at Meharry Medical College president Dr. James Hildreth.
They using him to sell you the dream of safety because he's studied epidemiology. He's the leading doctor in infectious disease.
Mocking Hildreth's impressive medical credentials.
All that mean is that you learned how to be a good house, do what they say do long enough to learn their mentality, and you the token boy or poster boy to spread that infestation amongst our people.
Are you concerned that this type of rhetoric will reflect badly on Gideon's Army?
It is my hope that the people of Nashville will remember the origins of Gideon's Army, and that the people of Nashville will know us by our work and by, the results that we have had in Nashville in a short amount of time.
That's Phil Williams reporting. You can see those controversial social media posts.
Man, a lot going on.